Hello, lovely souls, and welcome to Emily Whispers. I'm Emily, and I'm so happy you decided to join me tonight. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Drop a comment and say hello. I love connecting with each of you. If these little moments bring you peace, please like and subscribe so we can share more of them together. Now find your cozy spot. Wrap yourself in a blanket if you like. Take a slow, gentle breath, and let's drift into tonight's story. I felt the steering wheel jerk hard to the right, and the front of my old truck made a sickening sound as it dipped on the soft shoulder. My stomach leaped, and I slammed on the brakes. The tires made a grinding noise on the loose gravel. The truck came to a stop, half on the asphalt and half in the dusty expanse of the Arizona desert. My helmet, which I kept on the passenger seat, slid to the floor. My ears were ringing from the sudden stop. My chest felt tight. I checked myself over. I was not hurt, just shaken. I propped my elbows on the steering wheel to see what had happened. My pickup was about 5 feet off the road, tilted at an odd angle in the dirt next to a stretch of empty land. My jacket was fine. My hands were a little scraped from gripping the wheel. There was a dull ache in my shoulder from the jolt. I tried to start the engine again. It made a weak coughing sound, but it would not turn over. My mouth was so dry I could hardly swallow. I forced myself to get out, my boots sinking into the fine red dust. The sun had just set, leaving the sky a deep shade of purple and orange. My truck was dead. I opened the hood and peered inside, though I do not know much about engines. I reached in to check a loose wire, and my hand brushed against a sharp piece of metal. I pulled my hand back with a hiss of pain. A thin line of blood welled up on my palm. It was not a deep cut, but it stung. As I tried to wrap my hand in a dirty rag from my toolbox, I heard a soft sound on the gravel behind me. A woman stood there. She had on a simple, long skirt and a shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Her dark hair was pulled back, and her hands rested at her sides. She did not speak. I felt a spike of surprise and tried to stand up straighter, but my shoulder protested. She reached out and gripped my arm. Her fingers were cool and strong. I felt a wave of relief to have help, but she never said a word. She just gestured for me to lean on her. I nodded and tried to say thank you. My voice came out a bit hoarse. She started to guide me step by step down the side of the road. I walked alongside her, wincing a little from my shoulder. She turned back to look at my truck once. She waved at me to keep walking. I did, leaning against a weathered fence post that bordered the empty desert. My mind raced with random thoughts. Did anyone else see us? Did I leave my water bottle in the truck? I had. I tried to see if the woman would look back at me for instructions, but she seemed to know what she was doing. She just continued to walk, her steps silent on the dusty ground. When she came back to my side, I noticed her eyes. They were dark and serious, maybe a little sad, but I could not tell for sure in the fading light. She motioned for me to follow her. Her arm movements were smooth and deliberate, like someone who knew this empty land well. I asked, "Do you know if there is a town nearby?" The woman gave a slight nod. She made a gesture like she wanted me to walk in a certain direction. I asked her, "Can you help me get there?" She nodded again. I wondered why she did not speak, but I felt too worn out to press the issue. The pain in my cut hand was a dull throb. My breathing got shallow. I bit down on my bottom lip to keep from complaining. The woman stayed right next to me. I could hear the soft rustle of her skirt against the desert brush. I smelled a faint odor coming from her, like dry clay or old rain. She did not look at me much. She just led the way. I scanned the horizon for some sign of lights. Nothing. There was just the deep blue of the desert twilight. We walked like that for a few minutes. It felt much longer. I heard my own pulse in my ears. The air was warm and dry. My teeth chattered a bit, partly from the shock of the breakdown, partly from nerves. The silence between us felt strange, but I was not in the mood to force a conversation. After maybe another 10 or 15 minutes, I saw the dim glow of a single light. It was a motel sign, standing on a curve in the road. The woman waved her hand toward it. I nodded and said, "Thank you. I really appreciate this." She dipped her head in a small nod. I took a few more steps forward, and I planned to turn around and ask if she could help me call someone. But when I turned, I did not see her. I spun a bit too fast and felt my shoulder ache in protest. I gasped and stopped in my tracks. The woman was gone. I tried to peer into the darkness behind me. There was only the vague outline of some saguaro cacti and desert scrub. No other movement, no footsteps fading away. I listened for the sound of gravel shifting under shoes. I heard nothing but the wind. I stood there, breathing hard and shaking. My mind raced with questions. Had she moved that fast? Did she slip behind some rocks? I tried to call out, but my voice did not carry very far. I just let out a long exhale and limped the rest of the way to the motel. When I got there, the bright fluorescent light of the office stung my eyes. The inside looked empty, except for a bored-looking clerk behind the counter. I pushed the door open. Small bell made a sharp ringing sound. The clerk looked up. He was a skinny guy, maybe in his 30s, wearing a faded polo shirt with the motel's name on it. I asked if he had a first aid kit. He came around the counter and grabbed one from a small cabinet on the wall. He asked if I was in an accident, and I said my truck broke down back on the road. He nodded like he was only half listening. I sank into a plastic chair by the window while he handed me some antiseptic wipes and a bandage. After a few minutes, I told him about the woman who helped me. I asked if that woman had come through the motel earlier. The clerk stared at me. He said, "I have not seen anyone out there but you." His tone was casual, and it sent a chill across my arms. I repeated my question, describing the woman's shawl, her silent gestures, and the way she guided me here. The clerk shrugged. "I have been here all night. Nobody else has passed by." I felt my breathing catch in my throat. It did not make sense. The motel had a clear view of the road, and that woman had walked with me almost the entire way. I felt shaky again. I tried to change the subject, asked if the clerk had a phone I could use. My phone was in the truck, and I could not walk back without help. He handed me a dusty phone from behind the counter. I called a friend, David, who lived in the next town over, close enough to pick me up. While I waited, kept looking out the window, expecting to see that woman. The road stayed empty, just the glow of the motel sign shining on the asphalt. David arrived in about 20 minutes. We drove back to my truck, loaded my gear into his car, and I checked the area. No sign of anyone. The desert looked empty and still. Once I got home, David helped me inside, and I cleaned the cut on my hand. He left after making sure I was okay. I had the next day off work, so I figured I would deal with the truck in the morning. I woke up with a stiff shoulder. I rummaged through my things from the truck. My jacket was still dusty, and my work glove had some dark stains on the palm. At first, I thought it was dried blood, but the color was not quite right. It was a reddish brown with a slight shimmer like fine dust. I sniffed it, expecting a metallic or iron smell. Instead, I got a weird earthy odor, something I could not place. I tried to wipe it off, but the stain had stuck to the fabric. I decided to just wash the glove in the sink. I turned on the faucet, warm water running over the leather. As I scrubbed with soap, the water turned a murky red. I saw bits of reddish material swirling in the sink. It almost looked like clay. I touched it and felt a gritty texture on my fingertips. It did not feel like engine grease. My truck's grease usually has a thick, slick feel. This was more powdery, crumbling when I rubbed my fingers together. I stared at it. I had no idea what caused those marks. I rinsed the glove until the water ran clear, but small traces of that grit still clung to the fabric. I dried my glove and left it on the counter. All day, I kept thinking about the woman with the shawl. I wondered if the dust had come from her hand when she gripped my arm. That detail matched the glove in my kitchen, but that meant I had no explanation for the stains. I also could not figure out how my glove got that dirty. My jacket and pants had normal scuffs and a little grease from the truck, but not this odd residue. I replayed the breakdown in my head. I remembered the moment I cut my hand, the woman showing up, the road so quiet. Everything played in my mind like a series of dreamlike images. I asked myself if I had imagined her, but my truck was moved off the road, and I could not have done that by myself. I could barely stand without her help. I wondered if maybe she was some local woman who did not want to stick around or talk. But then the motel clerk's reaction came back to me. He was certain nobody else had passed by. I checked my hand. It was bandaged up. The cut was real. I poured a glass of water and stared at my glove on the counter. The silence in my apartment made me feel anxious. I looked out the window. Cars passed by outside. I turned on the TV for noise, but I could not focus on anything. My mind drifted back to that woman's face, her dark eyes, and the quiet way she helped me. I kept telling myself there must be a straightforward reason for what happened, but in the end, I could not find one. She disappeared so fast. I did not hear a single footstep. The clerk should have spotted her, and there was no sign of her on the road when I went back with David. All I had was that weird dust, or whatever it was, on my glove. I ended up visiting the breakdown site a few days later. My shoulder was still sore, so I wore a brace. I parked David's car on the shoulder where my truck had been. I saw the skid marks, a patch of disturbed gravel. I checked around for footprints or a spot where someone might have stood. I saw some flattened brush. It might have been from me, or maybe from the woman's shoes. The desert looked the same as that night: dry weeds, patches of red dirt, some broken glass. No footprints stood out to me. I did not see anything that could explain what I remembered. Since then, I have tried to move on from that night. Sometimes I forget about it for weeks, and then I will glance at my stained glove or see the faint scar on my hand, and it all rushes back. I still do not know who that woman was, or if I imagined her in my confusion. But I did not imagine my truck being off the road. I felt her grip on my arm. I saw her gesture for me to walk toward the motel, and I found that strange reddish grit in my glove. I do not have any big lesson or deep thought about it. It happened, it freaked me out, and to this day, I cannot explain it. I just know that when I needed help, someone showed up out of nowhere. She never said a word, and she vanished when I tried to thank her. The next morning, I found stains on my glove that did not match anything I recognized. That is it. That is all I can say. I still look at people's faces when I am out on the road, especially if they are wearing an old shawl. Part of me expects to see her again. Part of me hopes I never do. I never thought a simple walk could unsettle me so much. I started taking walks in Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, a few months ago to clear my head after long days at the art gallery. I usually zone out, letting the quiet atmosphere of the old graveyard wash over me. The place is peaceful after dark, and I like having that space to think. But one night changed how I see those walks forever. It all began on a humid Thursday. I parked my car just outside the main gate, which is always left open. The lampposts along the main paths cast enough light for me to see about 10 or 15 feet in front of me, but not much more. The air felt thick and warm, and I remember adjusting my thin jacket before starting to walk. The first loop was calm. I passed one security guard on his rounds. I waved at him, and he nodded once without speaking. A young couple sat on a bench near the entrance, talking quietly. Then I noticed the cat. It sat near the base of a tall, weathered monument, a dark shape against the gray stone. The creature was still, like it was watching something. At first, I did not realize it was watching me. Its eyes had this green glow under the lamplight. I glanced over, but it did not move. I kept walking. It is not unusual to see stray cats in Savannah, and a few live in the cemetery. Most of them are skittish. I did not want to make a big deal out of it. But when I took another look over my shoulder, the cat was on the path behind me, a few yards away. I slowed down for a second. It slowed down too. I sped up. It kept pace. It did not make a sound. It just stayed behind me at the same distance. I could not hear any distinct footsteps. In fact, the cat was impressively quiet. The only clue was its dark silhouette moving in the corner of my vision whenever I glanced back. When I stopped to rest near a bench, the cat stopped as well. I turned around and faced it. The lamplight hit its eyes again. They looked bright, but not in a normal way. They seemed more intense, but I tried not to dwell on that. I spoke in a calm voice, "Hey there, you lost," or something. The cat did not react. No sound, no twitch of the tail, no tilt of the head. It just sat there. I tried approaching it carefully. I took 2 steps forward, holding out my hand, and it stepped back, lowering its head, but not looking away. That gave me a little chill, because I realized it was fixated on me, but not in the usual timid way cats do. It felt more like it was studying me. I decided to ignore it for the time being and continued walking. It followed. I tried to stay calm. I thought maybe it was just curious. Halfway around the loop, I saw the security guard again. He was making his way toward the river bluff. I pointed toward the cat. "Hey, do you know if that cat belongs to anyone around here?" Security guard looked over my shoulder, squinted, and shook his head. "Haven't seen that one before," he said, then continued on his way. The cat stayed behind me for the rest of my second lap. After a while, I got a bit nervous. Something about those eyes bothered me, and I did not like the way it matched my pace. It never once tried to come closer. It also never turned away. I heard the chirping of crickets, faint city noise from the nearby streets, and my own footsteps on the gravel path. The cat's footsteps were not audible at all. When I finished the second lap, I thought about checking if it had a collar. I slowed down until I almost stopped. It stopped too, still keeping that distance. I took a few deep breaths, trying to steady my nerves. My heart was beating faster than normal, and I could feel the blood pulsing in my neck. I spoke louder this time. "Come here, kitty. I won't hurt you. Come on." I crouched down and patted my leg like people do when calling a cat. It inched back a bit. I took 1 step forward, and it bolted off the path and into the darker area near a patch of old tombstones. I lost sight of it for a moment. I scanned the area, squinting. The tall grass near a family plot shook slightly, but I could not see any movement beyond that. The cat seemed to vanish. I walked toward the tombstones, calling out, "Hey, come on. I just want to check if you are all right." No sound came back. I walked around the nearest monuments, not straying too far from the path, because it was easy to lose my footing in the shadows. I expected to see it lurking or running away, but there was nothing. No rustling, no sign of paw prints, nothing at all. I felt a wave of unease tighten my stomach. My hands felt clammy, and the hairs on my arms stood up. I told myself the cat must have slipped through a gap in a fence or found some hiding spot. I tried not to let my imagination run wild. It was just a stray cat, after all. But the sudden disappearance unnerved me. I continued my walk for a third lap, mostly to convince myself I was not spooked. Each step felt heavier than usual. I kept glancing around, searching for movement. A small breeze rustled the Spanish moss in the old oak trees, and once in a while, a passing car's headlights sliced across the stone angels. Every time I passed under a lamppost, I caught a glimpse of my own shadow stretching ahead of me. I felt the strong urge to check behind me. Sometimes I gave in and looked. Nothing. My chest felt tight every time I turned around. That night, I went home earlier than usual. In my apartment, I turned on more lights than normal. I noticed my heart was still beating fast, and my breathing was shallow. I tried to watch some late-night television, hoping to distract myself. But every few minutes, my mind drifted back to that moment when the cat locked eyes with me. The next evening, I almost skipped my walk. My stomach felt tense at the idea of going back there, but I forced myself. My routine matters to me, and I hate letting fear dictate my actions. I arrived around the same time, parked in my usual spot, and set off along the path. At first, I felt uneasy, scanning the area more than usual. I noticed every small detail: the dim light from each lamppost, the weathered faces of the stone statues, the scattered leaves on the ground. For the first half of my walk, I did not see any sign of that cat. I started to relax a bit. Then, near the cemetery's far side, I thought I saw movement in the corner of my eye. I turned quickly, but there was nothing on the path behind me. I exhaled, feeling a bit foolish. I chalked it up to my imagination. But as I continued, I caught a glimpse of a dark shape near the edge of a large, ivy-covered mausoleum. It looked like the silhouette of a cat watching from a distance. I froze mid-step, my breath caught in my throat. The shape vanished behind the stone structure. I hurried over, shining my phone's flashlight. The area was empty. The breeze made the ivy leaves sway, but there was no sign of the cat. My heart was thumping in my chest again. My palms got sweaty, and I found myself swallowing hard. I turned around and kept moving, walking faster. A few minutes later, I saw a woman walking her dog ahead of me. She had headphones on. I wanted to call out to her, but I felt embarrassed. What would I even say? Hey, have you seen a weird black cat with glowing green eyes? It sounded ridiculous in my head. I decided to keep quiet and finish my lap as quickly as possible. Over the next week, I tried returning to the cemetery several times. Some nights, I saw no sign of the cat. Other nights, I thought I spotted a black shape slipping behind a tree or vanishing into a cluster of bushes. I never got a clear look, and I never heard a sound. Just a flash of dark fur and then nothing. Each time it happened, I felt my muscles tighten. My shoulders got stiff, and my breathing became shallow. My mind would race, thinking, where is it now? Is it following me again? I stopped talking to people I saw in the cemetery. I used to greet fellow walkers and wave at passersby. Now I kept my head down, scanning the periphery, trying to catch the cat if it showed up. One night, I decided to do something different. I brought a small bag of cat treats. I figured if it really was a stray, maybe I could coax it close enough to check for a collar. I walked slowly, calling out in a gentle voice, "Hey, I brought something for you. I just want to help." My voice echoed a bit in the still air. I held out a treat, but nothing approached. I left a few pieces on a flat tombstone, hoping that might attract it. After a few minutes, I heard a rustling in some bushes behind me. I turned around, shining my flashlight. The leaves shook, and I saw the outline of the cat's head. Its eyes caught the light. I tried to stay still, but my pulse was already racing. The cat blinked, then moved backward, disappearing into the darkness. I checked the tombstone a few times, but nothing touched the treats while I was there. From that point on, I never knew if I would see the cat or not. Some nights, I managed to go through my entire walk in relative peace. Other nights, I caught those eyes reflecting off my flashlight or the dim lampposts. It became a pattern. Appear, watch, vanish. Every time it happened, my stomach churned and my hands trembled a bit. Sometimes I felt silly for being so jumpy, but there was something about those eyes that unsettled me. They always looked steady, not wild or fearful. Last Thursday, I had one of the strangest moments yet. I was on my second lap, halfway around, when I felt a presence close behind me. The hair on the back of my neck prickled, and I stopped in my tracks. I turned around, phone, flashlight ready, but I saw no one. As soon as I turned forward again, I caught a glimpse of the cat sitting on the path in front of me, maybe 15 feet away. That was the first time it was ahead of me instead of behind. My heart hammered in my chest. I felt sweat on my forehead. I lifted the flashlight, illuminating its form. The cat did not flinch. Its fur was a deep, solid black, and its eyes glowed in that odd, greenish way. I took a step toward it, hand extended, murmuring, "It is okay." The cat backed away slowly, then turned and darted off the path, disappearing behind a tall, ornate monument. I hurried after it, shining my light, but by the time I reached that spot, I saw only the dark shadows of the stones. I spent the next hour circling the area, searching for it, but found nothing. No sounds, no shapes, no footprints in the soft earth. I went home frustrated and shaky. I had trouble sleeping. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that image of the cat's green eyes staring back at me. Ever since then, I have changed how I walk. I keep looking behind me every couple of minutes, scanning for any shape or movement. I try to tell myself there is a logical explanation. Maybe the cat belongs to someone nearby. Maybe it is shy or has a habit of hiding. But deep down, I cannot shake that feeling that it is waiting to show up when I least expect it. There is a lingering sense of unease I cannot get rid of. Even now, as I am talking about it, I feel my shoulders tense and a slight tremor in my hands. Sometimes I consider finding a different place to walk or trying a gym instead. But I cannot let this fear control me. I still go to that cemetery at night because it is part of my routine, and I do not like feeling pushed out of my own space. Yet, every time I walk past a dark section of the path or hear a soft rustle in the bushes, my body tenses up. My eyes dart around and my breath quickens. I remember that first time I locked eyes with that cat, and my heart thumps a little harder. I have not seen it for a couple of days now, which makes me uneasy in a different way. I wonder if it is still there, watching from a distance. I catch myself glancing back all the time. I cannot tell if I am imagining shapes in the shadows or if it really is there. I just know that if it wants to appear, it will. And if it decides to vanish again, I will not be able to stop it. I guess I have come to accept that for now. But I will never walk that loop without being on high alert again. All it took was one strange cat with those unnerving green eyes, and now everything feels different. I am not sure when, or if, I will ever feel completely relaxed in that cemetery at night again. I still remember the day I opened that old leather-bound journal for the first time. I did not think much of it at first. I just wanted to see what my great-aunt had kept in the bottom of a dusty storage trunk. But the moment I saw that little book with the tarnished brass clasp, something shifted in me. It was not some dramatic moment with a storm outside or anything like that. I just felt an odd tension in my body, like a small, cold vibration in my hands. Now I wish I had left it all alone. My name is Clara. I am 32. I live by myself in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon, and I do not consider myself the superstitious type. My great aunt passed a few months ago, and I was left with a few old boxes of her things, stuff with little real value, mostly sentimental. Among those items, there was this journal, maybe 6 inches tall and 4 inches wide, made of dark, cracked leather. It looked very old, like it had been around for a century. I found it at the very bottom of a trunk when I was clearing out her storage unit. Inside, the pages were yellowed and completely blank. It did not look extraordinary at first. It was just a plain, empty book. But when I picked it up, I got a weird jolt. It was not a strong shock, more like a sudden chill that shot up my arm, but without any pain. My hands shook for a moment. I brushed it off, thinking maybe I was just tired from sorting through things all day. Then I noticed the smell. It was musty, but not in the usual way. It was stronger, almost earthy, like a damp cellar that had been sealed for too long. I slipped the journal into my bag without much thought and took the rest of the items, some old photos, a chipped teacup, and some other minor things out to my car. I placed everything in a cardboard box in my trunk and drove home. By the time I arrived, I noticed my bag felt cold. Not cold enough to alarm me, just cold in a weird way. I chalked it up to the cool evening air, or maybe just my imagination. Once I got inside, I set the box of my great aunt's stuff on the kitchen table. I laid out the items. The teacup had a crack, the photos were faded, and the other trinkets were just old junk. Then I pulled out the journal again. I held it in my hand, and there it was, the slight tremble in my fingers. It did not hurt, but it caught my attention. I tried to look at the pages more closely, but they were still perfectly blank. No markings, no indentations, nothing. I'm not the kind of person who gets easily scared. I was curious, that is all. So I decided to keep it on my nightstand. I left it there while I made some tea. But the longer I stayed in my bedroom, the more I felt something was off. My ears started picking up a faint sound, like a low, indecipherable whisper. I have had ringing in my ears before, but this was different. It came and went in waves. I looked at the journal on the nightstand, and I swear that whispering seemed to get a little clearer whenever I looked directly at it. Later that night, I had trouble sleeping. I got into bed around 11, but I tossed and turned for at least 2 hours. When I finally fell asleep, I had a nightmare. It was the first of many. In that dream, I was in my great aunt's old, dusty attic, searching through empty boxes. I felt an urge to find something, but I did not know what it was. The attic door made a heavy closing sound, locking me inside. I heard a soft, rustling sound, like dry leaves skittering across wood. I woke up drenched in sweat. When I turned on the bedside lamp, I noticed a thin red line on my right index finger. It was not deep enough to bleed much, just a shallow line, like a paper cut. I rubbed my finger, confused. I had not been handling any paper, and there was nothing sharp in my bed. The next morning, I felt uneasy. My fingers stung a bit, and I found myself looking around my room more carefully than usual. I could not shake the sensation that I was not alone, but of course I was. I got up, showered, got dressed, and went into the bedroom. The journal was still there on the nightstand. That musty smell was in the air, heavier than before. It almost made me feel sick when I got too close. I decided to put the journal away. I placed it in a drawer in my desk in the living room. For the rest of the day, I tried to go about my usual routine. I did some writing, ran a few errands, and went for a walk. But I felt on edge, like I had an itch in the back of my mind. My hands trembled slightly, even without touching the journal, and I still heard that faint whispering now and then. That night, I had another nightmare. This time I was standing in my living room, and the lights were off. The journal was on the floor, its pages flipping on their own in the dark. I reached down to pick it up, but my hand would not move the way I wanted. Instead, it felt like something guided my hand to touch the open pages. Then everything went pitch black. I snapped awake, my heart hammering, and I was sweating again. I turned on the light and checked my arms. More thin red lines, this time on the backs of both hands. They burned when I touched them. I started to worry. I told my friend Liam about what was happening. We met for coffee the next morning. I showed him the journal, which I had brought with me to explain everything. He suggested I just leave it alone. He thought maybe it was messing with my head, especially given my great aunt's passing and all the stress I was under. He said, "Clara, just put that thing away. Do not open it, do not touch it. Keep it out of sight." I decided to follow his advice. I left it in the drawer and did not touch it once I got home. But things got worse. Even without touching it, I started hearing strange noises in the house at night. It sounded like the soft turning of pages, usually around midnight. I would jump out of bed, rush to the living room, and turn on the lights. No one was ever there, but the air felt heavier, like a humid day, but without the heat. There were times I stood there, heart pounding, sure that I saw something move in the corner of my eye. But when I turned, there was nothing. I began to dread going to sleep. The nightmares did not stop, and every time I woke up, I found new superficial cuts. Some were on my shoulders, some on my back. I tried sleeping with a long-sleeved shirt on, but it made no difference. The marks showed up anyway. My nails were short, and the angles of the cuts did not make sense for me to have done them to myself. I felt my sanity slipping. One night, I decided to take the journal out of the drawer. I turned on every light in the room. I set the journal on the coffee table and just stared at it, trying to gather the courage to open it. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breathing got shallow. I felt sweat forming on my forehead. I unlatched the clasp and opened the cover. The pages sat there, looking as blank as ever. But the whispering sound grew louder in my ears. My fingertips felt cold. I reached out and touched the pages. My hands shook more intensely this time. I flipped through the book, trying to find anything. An indentation, a watermark, a symbol, nothing. The paper was smooth, completely blank, but it felt like it had a faint vibration, like it was alive in some strange way. My hands felt weaker the longer I held it, so I snapped it shut and put it back in the drawer. I tried to sleep after that, but I kept hearing faint tapping noises on my window, like a branch was hitting the glass. But there were no trees close enough. Every little sound in the house startled me. When I did drift off, I dreamed of being pulled through a dark forest by unseen hands, the ground covered in rustling, dry paper. In the dream, I felt a heavy weight on my chest, pressing down, suffocating me. I woke up gasping, sweat dripping down my neck, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My arms were covered in red streaks, stinging so bad that I had to get up and rinse them under cold water. After that, I could not stand to keep the journal in the house anymore. I decided I would leave it somewhere else, maybe in a storage unit or at a friend's place. But every time I looked at the desk drawer, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. My gut told me that once I took the journal out of the apartment, something would follow me. I do not have any logical reason for that feeling, but it was strong. It made the hair on my arms stand up. I tried to distract myself with television, music, even some light reading. But the same pattern repeated each night. Strange tapping noises, nightmares, new cuts. I stopped inviting people over because I felt embarrassed. My apartment looked normal during the day, but at night it turned into a place I hardly recognized. Every shadow seemed longer and darker. Every floorboard made a louder noise. I started triple checking the locks. One night, I texted Liam around 2 a.m, telling him I could not handle it anymore. He told me to get rid of the journal permanently, but I could not bring myself to throw it in the trash or bury it somewhere. It belonged to my great aunt, and despite everything, I felt weirdly guilty about discarding it. I decided maybe I could store it at Liam's place. He was a close friend, and he lived about an hour away. That evening, I took the journal out and wrapped it in an old scarf. I put it in a tote bag and placed it in the passenger seat of my car. My plan was to drive to Liam's house first thing the next morning. But that night, I barely slept. I kept the bedroom door locked, but around midnight, I heard tapping on the walls. It started in the living room, then moved to the hallway, then right outside my bedroom. It was not loud, but it was steady. I clenched my fists, sweat gathering on my palms. My heart beat so hard that I felt lightheaded. I stayed awake until dawn, sitting in bed with a heavy book in my hands, facing the door. The tapping stopped around 3 a.m. After sunrise, I felt some relief. I got dressed, grabbed my keys, and headed for the car. When I opened the passenger door, the tote bag was on the floor. The scarf was half unwrapped. The journal was still there, but the clasp was open. I felt a jolt in my stomach. My hands shook as I checked inside. The pages were still blank. I did not see any sign of a break-in, and I could not figure out how the bag fell or how the journal opened on its own. I wrapped it all up again, put it on the seat, and drove straight to Liam's place. The whole way there, I had the same whispering feeling, like pressure building in my ears. My mouth felt dry, and I kept glancing at the passenger seat, half expecting to see something sitting there. When I finally got to Liam's house, he opened the door and saw the state I was in. Pale, shaky, eyes bloodshot. I dropped the bag on his coffee table and said, I cannot keep this in my apartment anymore." He nodded, though he looked uneasy. We checked the journal again, but it looked the same as always, blank and cold. The smell was intense, though, and Liam even recoiled when he got too close. We sealed the journal in a plastic bag and locked it in an old metal footlocker he had in his garage. I stayed at his place that night. It was the first full night of sleep I had in weeks. No tapping, no nightmares, no cuts. The next morning, I felt like a new person, though I was still jittery. I told Liam I would come back in a few days to see how things were going. So far, I have not had any more nightmares or unexplained cuts. But I cannot shake the feeling that whatever was in that journal is not done with me. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night at home, sure that I hear that faint tapping on the window. But it fades when I fully awaken. Maybe it is just my imagination. Maybe not. All I know is that I cannot handle having that thing near me again. If it stays locked up in that footlocker, and I do not have to deal with the nightmares anymore, maybe I will finally get some peace. But every now and then, in the quiet moments, my hands still tremble, and I still hear that faint whisper. And I cannot help thinking about the cold feeling of that leather the first time I brought the journal home. I wonder what it really was, and I wonder if one day I will hear that same tapping outside my bedroom door again. Thank you for spending this time with me tonight, lovely souls. I hope this story brought you a moment of calm and curiosity. I'd love to know what part of the story stayed with you the most. Drop a comment and share your thoughts. I always love hearing from you. If you enjoyed tonight's journey, don't forget to like and subscribe so we can continue exploring these quiet moments together. Now, take one last deep, gentle breath. Get cozy and let the calm of the night carry you softly until we meet again.